Welcome to Cooking with Blue Hens. My name is A. White Collins, and I'm a board member from the Phoenix Alumni Club. The university is pleased to remain connected with alumni during these trying times. Our Phoenix group has had the pleasure of cooking with Chefs O and Emily in the past. And although our June in-person event had to be canceled, we're really excited to offer this virtual class now to alumni across the country. A special shout out to fellow Phoenix board member Greg and our super strong leader Rachel. We love you. I'm excited for this class. I'm rocking my UD t-shirt. I'll be drinking wine that was bottled as part of a Phoenix event and munching on Chesapeake pretzels a la Deer Park Tavern. First, I'd like to introduce Chef O. Omay's first career was as an artist, and she won several awards and had projects that toured the world. She's even earned Academy Awards for special effects in the film industry. Looking for a new challenge and having a talent for cooking, a love that she acquired early in life from the women in her family, she transitioned to the art of food. She has worked in the industry for over 25 years as executive pastry chef for the top catering company in the Valley, as a private chef, and then as chef and owner of Terra Java Bake Shop and Coffee House. We are lucky that she subsequently landed in the kitchen at Fry's Cooking School. Traditional and historical influences inspire her approach to the food she creates. For Chef Emily, food, cooking, and nutrition have been her passion for almost 20 years. She received an applied science degree from Scottsdale Community College Culinary School and studied holistic nutrition at the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. She has worked her way up from line cook and catering to private chef, then kitchen manager, and is now a chef instructor with Fry's. Well, we have lots of yummy things to make, so take it away, chefs.
So, cooking. We're going to be doing a few dishes here tonight. So we have a wild rice salad, a green sauce, skillet, zucchini, and squash, a fillet of fish, pan-fried fillet of fish, and a peach parfait. So the most important thing that us chefs do is we chop things up. So it's very important to have your knife skills at their highest level possible. So we're going to go over basic knife skills right now. So I want you to take a look. I printed out a anatomy of a knife for us. You can see that on the smaller screen there. Yep. So your knife consists of your tip, your sharp edge, your spine, heel, the bolster, the tang that goes inside of the handle, and the butt. So when you're looking for a chef knife, you want a knife that's what we refer to as forged. Okay, so a forged knife is a knife that's designed all in one. It starts from the tip and goes all the way through the butt as one. Forged knives are done with multiple metals. So they have metal for sharpness, for flexibility, so they're more durable. As opposed to what we call a stamped knife. A stamped knife is usually a cheap metal, and then it's just jammed in some type of handle. With a stamped knife, you never know how far that tang is going to extend in. And on occasion, I've been using these cheaper knives, and they have broken right there, and you realize that your tang is only so big. These are okay for starter, but if you're really going to cook with any frequency, get yourself a forged knife. And these don't have to cost a lot. You can find a decent knife starting at $50. You can also spend $5,000 on them. So start off easy, work your way up. Okay, so that's the basics of knives. Well, let me also say in regards to knives, we get asked a lot, what is the best knife to use? And besides being forged, the other thing you need to consider is a knife that fits in your hand. Knives come in all different shapes and sizes and weights. Okay, so we have two right here. So you can see the handles are very different. This one's a little shorter and it's much heavier. So a knife that you're you're not feeling confident with, you're going to be hesitant, so more chance that something's not going to work out right for you. So if you're looking for a chef knife, go someplace where they let you pick it up, play around with it, and feel it, so you can be comfortable with it and know that it's a knife that you like. Right? My other word of advice on knives is do not buy a knife set. You pay a premium price for a lot of knives that usually just sit there and collect dust. Okay, so start out with a chef knife and then a utility knife. So utility knives are our shorter knives. You get in for close-up work, right? All right, so then we move on to holding our knife. So a chef primarily holds their knife with what we call a pinch grip. It's your index and your thumb finger on the blade of the knife up against the bolster, right? And then these fingers just tuck the handle into your palm. Everything's nice and tucked in. This pinch grip right here gives you all the power and control over your knife. The most common mistakes we see when we're teaching is what we refer to as Mr. Pointy. That's when your index finger is sticking out. You don't have control, your knife can slip, and it puts a lot of pressure in your hand here. Okay, so don't listen to Mr. Pointy, he's not safe. The other thing I see occasionally is what we call the broadsword grip of death, is when we're holding our knife out here. I've never been attacked by a vegetable, so don't worry, I'm not going to attack you. Okay, so pinch grip, tucked in, nice and controlled. This hand, you want to get these fingers out of the prime cutting area. Okay, so you want to just pull those in a little bit so they're curled. When we have the kids in here, we refer to this as our tiger paw. All right, so that looks like this. Okay, you can see the fingers curved in out of the way of the edge of the knife. All right, there's another one. Okay, so a nice curve away. We're not knuckling down, we're just keeping these fingertips curled in out of the way. So we have our grip, we have our tiger paw here, and then our cutting action. Whenever our item allows us, this is what we want. We want to go point down first, bring your knife down, push forward, pull it up. Okay, it's a piston action. So what we're doing here is maintaining contact with the board, and it's a nice slide. It makes it safer and more efficient for you. Okay, so if everybody that's cooking along with us, take out your knife, get your pinch grip going, and practice that smooth piston action on your board a little bit so you can get used to it. All right? Okay, so when we're cutting, we practice that. I have a stunt vegetable here for practice to show you. When you're cutting, it ends up looking something like this. Okay, my point comes down, I bring it through and I slide. When you're cutting items that are very fibrous, like celery, green onions, things like that, it's really going to tell you if you've gotten your slide all the way through. When you don't have your slide come all the way through, you get what we call an accordion cut. Okay, it opens up, but it's not cut all the way through, right? So that's what that slide does. Okay, so as much as you can, you're going to push your product through your knife. And you want to cut on the forward slide. It pushes the items onto your board rather than off of your board, right? And onto your shoes. Okay, so that's basic cutting. Now, not everything comes all nice and neat and handy like a stick of celery. So there will be other techniques that you need to employ. And as we go through, we'll look at those as well. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, now that we have our basic cutting in hand, we're just going to work through our items for the recipes and get them prepped. Okay, a big thing that chefs do that most home cooks don't do is what we call mise en place. That means to put in place. So we get everything together and then we group them by our recipes so that when we start to cook, we can go from beginning to end without having to stop. The other thing that allows you to do is, as you're getting things ready, if you realize you're out of something, you can substitute or you can adjust your recipe or go out and get what you need. Okay, so we're going to start off really easy here. So I want everybody to get their cookies that we're going to use for our peach parfait, and we're just going to whack them about. Now I have a meat hammer here, it's a little overkill, so anything, you can even use your hands. You're just going to smash up your cookies. Get those ready. We don't need to completely pulverize them, just so they're a little broken up, okay? Exactly, some texture to them, not a powder, Chef Emily reminded me. Okay, so that shouldn't be too bad. Everybody should have their cookies scrunched up. That's a technical cooking term, by the way, scrunched up. All right, now if you didn't get sliced almonds, we're going to roughly chop our almonds here. So this is what we call a rock chop technique. Okay, so it's a little different than the slicing technique we were using. You gather your items. Actually, I'm going to only do about half of these at a time. You gather the items that you're going to chop. Now, this technique is for items that you can't really hold on to anymore. Okay, so you make your pile, put your point out in front again, and then this hand is going to rest or hold your knife, and we're going to make a pivot point. Okay, and we're going to use the curve of that knife to our advantage to rock through our item. Okay, with the almonds, I need to go a little bit slow because they will jump about on the board. All right. Now, rock chopping, what happens is all of your items will start to spread out around on your board. That's just the nature of it. Now, as a chef, we are very passionate about keeping this knife edge nice and sharp. So we never want to scrape perpendicular with our blade. All right, that dulls your knife very quickly. So don't scrape, regroup your items, and then you're going to come through and rock chop again. And you just keep doing that technique until you get it broken down as far as you need your item. Okay? Now your choices in the scraping department, like I said, we don't use our edge. You can flip it over and use the dull spot, your spine, or you can come up underneath and pick things up. I'm not impacting my knife edge when I come underneath and just pick up. All right, so those are two things you can do. The other option is I always like to have a little bench scraper nearby, and I use most of my scraping up with my bench scraper. Okay, there's our almonds, and I also have a few little pecans here I'm going to chop up as well. Okay, so same thing, get a few of these out here, and I'm going to rock chop. These are a little bit harder than those almonds are. Sound like I'm breaking things on your end? It sounds like it down here. Okay, so there's my. All right. So hopefully everybody. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our bread for our pandan. Okay, so I have a roll here that I'm going to use. Now when you're cutting bread, here we go to specialty knives. You want to use a serrated knife. This is an offset, so it protects your fingers, right? So you don't get your fingers there as you come down. And this is just a regular serrated. I don't need this whole roll, so I'm just going to chop a few pieces off of my bread, like so. And then we want this in cubes, okay? Doesn't really matter how pretty these are. These are going to get thrown in our milk to make our pandan, so they can be packed about. Don't worry about making them look all pretty. All right, so there's our bread cubes. Okay. All right, the next thing on our list is peaches. So you'll notice that even though we have all these recipes and you eat them in a certain order, you don't necessarily prep things in the same order. You want to look at, when you're creating your dishes, and your what I refer to as our call list for the menu. You want to look at the dishes, how long they will hold, their cooking times and things like that. And that will dictate what you start with first and what you do last. So that's why we're also jumping around a little bit. And then when I'm doing my prep, my cutting, I look at things like, is it going to make a mess on my board? Am I going to have cross-contamination with different flavors? So for instance, I wouldn't want to do my garlic before I did my peach for my parfait. Okay, so our peach, we're going to cut all the way around. Okay, and if you're using frozen peaches, depending on how big they are, you might want to cut them a little bit smaller. Okay, so common thing that happens with people when they're doing handwork. Okay, whenever we take something off of the board and pick it up, it's referred to as paring or handwork. Okay, so when people are doing handwork, they often slice themselves here because they're not paying attention. So if you're not sure or you don't feel safe, find the flattest part of whatever you're cutting, put that down so it's nice and stable. You're going to make a tunnel with your hand that your knife goes through. Okay, and then we're just going to cut around and spin it as we go. That's the safest way to do it. Okay, and we just open that up. Now I'm going to take my utility knife because it's smaller and I can get in there. We're going to take that pit out since it broke. Sometimes peaches, you know, your pit pops out and other times it doesn't. Sometimes you have to arm wrestle the peach to even get the pit out at all. Okay, so I'm just doing a little angle cut here and getting that peach pit out. All right. And here we're just going to do nice slices. So again, I'm going to go to my safest surface, which is my flat surface, and I'm just going to do slices on my peaches. Okay, so here's my tiger paw. I'm going to just slice. As your peach gets smaller, it gets harder to hold on to. So when you get down to the nub, there's a couple different techniques you can use here. You can pick up a few slices, put them back in place, and then do your tunnel grip and cut it that way. Or you can lay it flat, put your hand flat, and cut it that way. Okay, so two different options depending on what you're feeling safe with. Okay. Everybody up with me? Any questions so far on our knife techniques? All right. My scraper go. Oh, there we go. All right, there's our peach. Okay, now we're going to be doing some green onion. Okay, so green onion, again, I talked about having a lot of fibers in here. So you want to look at your green onion. If there's any little dried out bits here at the end, clean those off. Get rid of them. Okay, so we're going to do what we call a bias cut here. This is for visual and also releases more flavor. Okay, so bias cut means we're going to cut at an angle. All right, so you're going to start. Great question. Yeah, so about cutting boards. So the best board that you can use is actually a hardwood cutting board. So, and any hardwood. So walnuts, maple, bamboo even. The reason why wood is better, it's naturally antimicrobial and the surface is self-healing. You can also refinish them. They are the easiest substance on that edge that we are so obsessed about keeping sharp. The next best is plastic, which in the school we need to use because we have to high temp sanitize everything. So plastic is okay. It's a fairly forgiving surface on your knife edge, but remember, as they get used, they get fuzzy. So those little fuzz and cuts tend to hold on to particles. So even though it might look clean, it might not be completely sanitized. So make sure that when you're cleaning them, it's with some bleach or a very high temp to get all of that off of there. The absolute worst thing you can cook on or cut on, excuse me, is a ceramic or glass or a hard metal. They dull your knife like that. They're very slippery and very dangerous. So please do not use any kind of ceramics or metal when you're cutting. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter what you're cutting, whether you're using the wood or the plastic. At home, I have one plastic board that I dedicate to all of my raw meats, and then everything else I use a wood board for. So that's my 2 cents on boards for you. Okay, so meanwhile, we're cutting our green onion at our bias cut. You see this cut used a lot in Chinese cooking, not only for the aesthetics of it, but again, because it releases more flavor. It opens up what they refer to as the life force of the vegetable. And as we get down here, now green onion, a lot of people think you can only use the green top, but that's not true. You can use the whole thing. And we're going to use this one. We're going to use the whole thing for this application, for this recipe. Okay, so that's our green onion for our salad. Okay. And then we are just going to use some green tops here for our squash. Okay, so this is taking the place of chives. Now, if you happen to have gotten chives, it's great. So we want this fairly fine cut here. When we're cutting things, the thing you need to be considering is what it's going with. So you don't want a big giant piece of something and a little tiny piece of something. You want them to be evenly matched. They're going to cook better and they're going to feel better in your mouth when you're eating them. Okay, so here we're going to have nice thin cuts. Trying to make sure I get that slide all the way down so they stay separate. And we're only going to use the green here, right? Because this is taking the place of the chives, like I said. Now, if you wanted these even smaller for whatever you happen to be making, you could then do a little rock chop through here and make these even smaller. All right, so there's our green onion tops. All right, so the next thing we have up is our apple for our salad. Okay, so now I talked about working in hand and paring. So the most common pairing things is peeling, and especially apples. So most of the time you're going to be told to cut away from you because that's safer, all right? However, when you're peeling something that's a sphere, if you're peeling away from you, there's a chance that you might come over and catch those fingertips. So you want to peel towards you so you can watch what's going on, all right? I like to brace my thumb and then I pull the peeler towards me, okay? That way I can see everything that's going on. I have control. I have yet to have a peeler slip off. Okay. So we're gonna go all the way around and get this apple completely naked. Okay, we'll get rid of that. Go back a few little spots that I missed. Now, if you don't mind the skin, for the most part, I cook and I leave the skins on whatever it is that I'm cooking. On a few occasions, though, I like to remove the skins, and that just has to do with texture and mouthfeel. Okay, so like an apple pie, you know, you don't really want the skins in there. And the same with the salad. I really don't want to be chewing on skins with this salad that we're doing.
Will you leave it on for like sauteing apples?
Yes, I definitely leave it on for that. If I'm making a charcuterie board, perhaps, you know, you can leave that skin on there. Exactly. Okay, so cutting our apple. Now, if your apple doesn't have a nice flat spot to work with, just give it a little trim. Okay, so flat surface is a safe surface. Okay, so this is how we production cut apples. Okay. Okay, peeling peaches. No, they do not have to be peeled. Again, that's a judgment call, whether you do or don't like your peaches, the peel on that. And the easiest way to peel a peach is actually what we call concasse. So concasse, I'll have an orange stand-in for us here. Concasse is when you would cut a little tiny cross on the bottom of your fruit. So this is a peach, right? And then you dip it in hot water for 30 seconds or so and take it out. It doesn't cook the fruit, but it loosens up the peel. And then from that little slit, you can peel your peel off of your orange. That's a really easy way to do it. They do it with tomatoes, peaches, items like that. Okay, so our apple, we're gonna estimate the size of our core and we're gonna cut down on one side. Okay, we're going to turn that around and we're going to cut the other side. Okay, now if you misjudged a little bit, which happens often, just take your utility knife, take that little bit of the seed out, get that out of the way. All right, and so then here we're going to cut the two wings off. Okay, so right there. And right there. Now you can either nibble on this or just set it aside. Okay, so from here, we're trying to make all these similar size and shape, right? Okay, similar to what we did with our peach. I'm going to slice these down. Okay, I usually take the ends out of the way and then I cut these again. So now I make sticks. Cutting is really about geometry, okay? So the general rule is you go slices, okay? So this is our slice or our layer. Then we go sticks, okay? So now we've made little sticks, and now we're gonna do dice. So now we take these and we dice, okay? So we have all our nice little squares. All right, so we're just gonna dice up this whole apple. Now, depending on how big your ends are, you may or may not need to cut those down as well. And the more comfortable you get, the more you can cut in one shot. Okay, so now I'm going to stack all of those up. I'm going to cut all of these together.
I think it's important to cut what you feel like you're comfortable cutting and not try to do all of it at once.
Definitely.
People get hurt.
Chopping and cutting is about attention to detail. It's not about speed. It's not about showing off. I know we all see these TV chefs that have knives flying through the air, chopping at the speed of sound, multiple things going on. You want to have that focus, attention to detail, so that everything comes out the way that you want it to come out. Okay, so don't get intimidated by those guys. All right, so we're going, we have our slices. Here's my sticks. Okay, and then you see that I turn these around so they stabilize each other. That, and now my dice. All righty. Oh, looks like we have a question on the board there. Depending on how long you are going to be holding your fruit, yes. Putting it in an acidylated water will help it not brown. So that can be anything, orange juice, lemon juice, anything like that. You don't need a lot. If I'm doing a sweet application, I prefer orange juice. If I'm doing savory, I prefer lemon juice. Okay, so we're going to be using this pretty quick, so I'm not too worried about this browning tonight. So we're just going to set that aside. Okay, next thing is we need a little bit of orange juice for our vinaigrette. Okay, so when we're doing, if you just went out and purchased a small thing of orange juice, totally fine. If you have an orange, this is how we treat citrus when we're trying to get the liquid from it. So first, you want to give it a little massage. Okay, really get in there. You want to get it squishy. You want to make it feel all nice and loved, massaged. Oh, this is great. The other trick is that you can throw it in a bowl of hot water for a little while. That will loosen things up, so it's like a full spa treatment for the citrus. Okay, and then when you've made them feel all nice and welcome, then you sneak up from behind, and we're going to cut them across the equator. All right, so there's our top and our bottom. We're going to cut them across there. And cutting them across the equator opens up all the cells so we can get that juice out better. Now, you do not need a fancy gadget to squeeze. You can, of course, just hand squeeze, right? Some people's hands have more strength than others. The technique that I like to do is take a pair of tongs, put your citrus in your tongs, and squeeze. This gives you a lot more power there to get that juice out. It has to do with the leverage. That's all that physics going on. Okay, the other things, then you can then take the other end and you can use that as a reamer. And I believe we need about 1/3 of a cup for this. Is that correct, Chef Emily? Okay, so we need about 1/3 of a cup. We'll drain this out later on too. Okay. We'll do this one. Now, because this is an orange that doesn't have any seeds, you wouldn't actually have to strain this pulp out if you didn't want to for your vinaigrette. You could leave that in. That would be totally fine. Again, that's a texture call. Some people like it, some people don't. So whenever you're doing recipes, especially a new recipe, I always recommend that you do it at least once that is exactly the way the author wrote it. That way you can get to understand what they're trying to create. After you have that, play around with it, make it your own. If you like, more spicy, throw some spice in it. If you prefer some other kind of citrus in whatever you're doing, then do that. But if you don't have a baseline of what the dish is trying to be, then it makes it hard for you to make those adjustments. All right, moving on. Oh, we got a lemon to juice too, so we're going to do the same technique there. Okay, so give it a little massage. A little bit, yeah. There's a few large chunks in that one. Let's take the bigger ones out. All right. Okay, I think I have made him pliable to my will here. All right. Cut him in half across the belly. Now, this one does have seeds, so you can strain into a strainer, or again, just into your bowl and then strain it afterwards. I'm actually not trusting myself tonight to be able to hit the strainer, so I'm just going to strain it afterwards. Now, lemon juice is usually, smaller amounts are used because it's a pretty powerful flavor profile. I don't think we need too much lemon juice. We just need a little splash here and there. So I'm going to only do half of this lemon. Now, if you have recipes that call for zest, you want to zest them before you do this, just because it makes it easier to zest your lemon before you cut it in half. And once a lemon is, say you have a recipe that only needs zest, the lemon, of course, is still fine. Just make sure and wrap it up nicely because you've taken its protective coating off, and you want to wrap it so it doesn't start to dehydrate on you. All right, so there's our lemon. We will strain that as well later on. Okay, next on our hit parade, we're going to do our zucchini for our salad. Another thing, which I probably should have mentioned at the beginning, is you always, always wash your produce, okay? Even if it's in a bag. Don't trust somebody else with your health, right? I'm sure you guys have all heard that there have been, numerous recalls on bagged items as well. So always wash your produce before you use it. All right, so our zucchini going into our squash and our corn. So you want to keep in mind the size of your corn. So you don't want to make our zucchini too big. So again, we're going to do a fine dice here. We're going to trim that top and bottom. Okay, I'm going to find a place where it naturally rests. And I'm going to use my tunnel grip again and cut the length of my zucchini. Okay, so now I have my flat surface. Okay, so again, now we're going to do our layers or our slices. One more, I think, there. There. And there. Okay, so there's our slices. We're going to cut these larger ones again. These end pieces, yes, I think I will cut these down again. There we go. And that one. Okay, so there's our sticks that we're making. Okay, one more. All right, so there's all of our sticks. And now we're going to bring these together and we're going to dice. Again, only cut the amount that you're comfortable with, all right? If you don't feel comfortable holding all of this, then just do a few at a time. So you notice with this one, I'm having to pick up my knife a little bit and then bring it down. It's harder to maintain contact with this larger amount that I'm cutting. But I'm still slicing forward, trying to keep things on the cutting board. The other thing with cutting board is you don't want to bind yourself up. So you notice this is getting pretty full, so I'm going to clean these off a little bit so I have more room to cut. That also makes it safer for you. Okay, so I have that out of my way. So now I can bring these in and finish up. You notice when I clean my knife off, some people are concerned that I'm going to cut my fingers. So I don't go across the edge. I keep my finger back and just run mostly along the spine. Okay, so I'm not touching that sharp edge, even though it might look like it. My fingers are back, up and away. Okay, and we're going to do some onion. Okay, now dicing onions, we're going to use the onion to our advantage here, the way that it is designed in its growth. Okay, so you have the root end, okay, and then you have the part that grows up. Okay, so this root end I lovingly refer to as the hairy little butt. Okay, the hairy little butt is our friend. We're going to use it. Okay, so down again, our tunnel grip. We're going to cut it from head to butt. Right, so now I have a nice flat surface. Put that down. Okay, so we're going to do our slices or our layers. I'm going to cut horizontally this way across my onion. Okay, so I'm going to put it down. I'm going to rest my hand here, fingers up. I'm going to take a horizontal cut across. I am going to stop before I go all the way through. Okay, so you're going to rock it in. And stop. Okay, bring it up a little bit more and do another cut. You have to kind of rock it and slide it, and it depends on your onion. This is a pretty wet onion, so it's sticking some on my blade. I'm going to do it one more time. Okay, so each time I stopped, let me put that back in, all right, so that it doesn't go all the way through. Right, so there's, okay, preventing crying from cutting an onion. So when you cut an onion, it is its defense mechanism. It's a sulfur-based compound that's being released, and it's telling you, stop it, you're hurting me. So all onions are going to give off this gas, no matter what. Really the only two tricks that work to a certain degree is you can put your onion in your fridge for a few minutes before you're going to cut it, and that will shrink the cells up and keep the gases colder and lower onto your board. The other thing is have a very sharp knife so you're not rupturing a lot of the cells. Okay, the quicker you can cut it, the less gas is going to be released. All the other wives' tales about, I don't know, holding your breath or sucking on a penny or whatever that stuff, they're just wives' tales. So sharp knife, cold onion. Okay, so we have our layers, just like in our zucchini and everything else we've done. Now we're going to turn these to make the stick. Okay, so you're going to take your point and you're going to put it in, away, right? We're not going to cut all the way through. I'm going to push that point all the way down till it hits the board. And then we're going to pull down. Okay, so now we've made this cut. Okay, so you're going to move it over and you're going to do the same thing. Point down, pull down. You'll see little bits start to come out in the layers. That's what it's supposed to do. Now you can make these cuts as large or as small as you want, depending on the dice that you want. All right? So all these inner layers start to come out. So now we have the sticks, just like we made with our zucchini. So now we're going to turn those and we're going to cut them up dice. Okay, so tiger paw. Now you're going to get to a point where at the hairy little butt end, where you haven't cut all the way through. Okay, let's take those off. Okay, so now what we do is we flip this down. Okay, so we have a larger flat surface, and we're going to just clean up around that end. Okay, and then that just gets tossed out. All right, so there's our diced onion. Challenging me to put it in these little bowls. Little onion debris here and there that we got. Okay, bell pepper. Right, so one of the things when we're cutting all of this, here, that's for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is different chefs will have different techniques for different vegetables. This is how I like to prepare a pepper, especially when I'm dicing it. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a little butt trim. Okay, move that out of our way. And then we're going to give them a little haircut. We want to cut just below, just enough so we can get this out. Okay, set that aside. So now we can see all the way through our pepper. All right, so I usually pick the largest chamber if there's one that's, you know, considerably larger than the other, and see how this membrane attaches here all the way down. I'm going to cut right next to it, so it's going to open up that chamber. Okay, so then I can take my knife, a horizontal cut like we did on the onions, and we can take that out. We'll take the next one out. Now sometimes these will come out all together. They will stay intact, and other times they separate. So now we have a nice flat piece of pepper. We always want to cut membrane side on the back, right? We want to use this interior. When you're cutting on the interior, it cuts much more easily. I'm going to do that. So now I can stack these. And again, if you're not comfortable with this, do it one at a time. And now, okay, so there's our layers, all right, our slices. Now I'm going to do the sticks. Okay, there's all of our sticks. And now we're going to do the dice. I'm going to flip those over. Try and get as much of the skin side down. Come on. Okay, and dice. Oh, one that got away. All right, so there's all of our diced pepper. Okay, so then we have some parsley. We have parsley in a couple different of our recipes here, a couple different ones. So this is a rock chop like we did earlier. Now this will be a little easier than we did with the nuts because it's nice soft parsley. Okay, so again, point in front, rest or hold, and rock. So just getting spread out there. So I'm going to regroup. I want this a little bit smaller. All right. There's our parsley. Oh, I forgot to mention with our peppers that the butt end and the top are perfectly fine to use. So you would just slice these up as well. Okay. With the top, you want to push that out, right? And then you just chop that up as well. Okay. So it's perfectly fine to use those two ends. So you have as very little waste as possible. All right, we're almost done with our cutting. You know, prep and cutting takes the longest, actually. All right, so now we're going to do another technique. This is one of my, say what? It's a $5 one, yes. One of the things I say is when you go out to eat, if I use French words, I can charge you more money. So this is not a chop of mint, this is a chiffonade. Okay, so that goes from, you know, $1 up to $5 right there. Chiffonade, you're going to take your leaves and make a pile of them. Okay, take the biggest one and put it on the outside. And then you're going to roll this very tight into a little cylinder. All right. Okay, so this is close knife work. This takes a little bit of practice. Okay, so we're going to rest my knife on this knuckle with my finger bent, and I'm going to take very fine little slices and work my finger back. Mint tends to turn brown or black fairly quickly, so you want to wait usually till the very last to do your mint. Okay, so when you chiffonade now, you have, chiffonade means ribbon, so you have these lovely little ribbons of mint. So that can work with any large leaf herb. Okay, for our green sauce, we need a bunch of parsley. We're not going to chop this up too much. We're just going to whack the thicker stems off because these can get woody and bitter. We don't want that, so we're just going to chop those off. And take a quick look through and see if there's any others that need to get taken out, like so. More here. Okay, so we're really looking just for the larger stems. That's good, I think. So these aren't too bad. Let's see if these aren't too bad. Okay, and since we're going to be using a food processor here, it's really about all we need to do. We can do a couple more whacks just to make it a little bit more manageable to get it into the food processor. That's really all you need to do there. I'll try not to make a mess and get it back on the plate. Easier said than done.
That's pretty good.
Okay, I think the last thing for our cutting, we have some garlic. Okay, garlic. These have already been cleaned, and they've already had their little stem ends cleaned off as well, okay? So if that's dried up and woody again, you want to clean that off because that's not good to eat. Okay, so there's a couple different ways you can do garlic. The more you process garlic, the more garlic flavor you're going to release. So for example, if you're doing a 40 clove chicken, you're using whole cloves. You're not going to mince those up or you'd be overwhelmed, all right? So old school style doing garlic, you're going to take your garlic, set it there. You're going to put your knife down, keep your hands away off the edge so you're not going to hurt them. Set that there and then give it a whack. All right? And then a rock chop. Yeah.
Okay. So flat leaf parsley is more manageable to handle when you're chopping it. And then the flavor profile, it's a lighter flavor and not as strong as curly leaf parsley, especially since we're using cod tonight as our fish fillet. We don't want to overpower our senses and overwhelm them with the strength of the curly parsley. It can be pretty potent.
Okay, so that's one way. Another way, as a chef, I have played with every single garlic toy there is out in the world. And this is actually my personal garlic rocker. This is the toy that I like if I'm going to use anything. It's called a garlic rocker. You can find them online for, I don't know, 15, 20 bucks. All you do is put your clove down, then you're going to push this on top. You're going to push down and rock. That's it. Take your next one, push down and rock. Okay, so if you don't want to stand there and chop little bits of garlic all day, this is the way to do it. And then you just scrape that off. So going back to what I said about garlic and how you process it and it releases it. So that's why you will see recipes that will say whole clove or sliced, minced, crushed. They're trying to get different levels of garlicness into that dish. All right. Okay, I think we have mise en place everything. So now we're going to start assembling and cooking. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's get this. I'm going to turn this. We're using cast iron tonight, and cast iron takes a bit to heat up. So I am going to put these on very low so they can start to warm up for us. All right, so we're going to be doing that thing there. Okay, so the next thing, we're going to work on our peach parfaits. All right. press. So the reason I don't like garlic presses is most of them have too many moving parts. They tend to squish the garlic quite a lot, and they're just kind of a pain to clean. So that's my personal preference as to why I don't use presses. If you find that they work for you, great, go right ahead. Okay, so the first thing we need to do with our peaches is we need to marinate them. Okay, so we have a little bit of, what are we using, Jack?
Amaretto.
Oh, we're using amaretto for this one, right? So, okay, so there's our amaretto, and then we're going to put in our sugar. So sugar will help release the natural juices in the peaches. And then, yep, and then we're just going to stir that around a little bit. So this is referred to as macerating. So getting these juices to flow, getting a little of that alcohol flavor in the peaches. Okay, now this needs to sit for 20-30 minutes for it to do its thing. So we're going to pop this in the fridge while we continue on. All right. And at the same time, we're going to put in our glasses that we're going to be used. We're going to put those in the fridge as well, so they will also chill for us. Okay. Yep. All right, so the next thing we need to do is hydrate our cranberries. Okay, so when you're cooking with dried fruit, especially when you're baking, you need to rehydrate your dried fruit. It'll make the dish much, much better in the long run. And like I said, especially when you're baking, because that way it won't pull out the moisture from what you're baking. So all you need is some warm water, and you just pour that on top. Easy as that. And again, we're just going to set that aside and let those soak up some juice, some water there. We're going to do panade. Okay, so we're going to do the panade. So panade is a very, very old technique to thicken items. So way back in the days of yore, people would have leftover stale bread where they might not have access to other things. So the panade is just your stale bread, and we're using milk. So similar to rehydrating our cranberries, we're just going to put that in there, squish that about, and let them soak that up. And that's going to help thicken our sauce later on. Okay? So there's the start of our panade. Okay. So next we have capers. We're using 2 tablespoons of capers in our green sauce. Wow. Sorry, the brain just went. Okay, so want to make sure that your capers are drained, right? Okay, so I'm just going to drain these out. Drain these a little bit and get my 2 tablespoons. This is going to go right into our food processor. I need a board back here. Sorry, one moment. Technical difficulties here. Going to do a little rearrange. Yep. Yes. There we go. There we go. Now we can see what we're doing. Okay. Let's see. Another tablespoon of capers. Making sure they're drained right into the food processor. Okay, here's our food processor. Okay, so our green sauce. So then we're going to put in our parsley that we rough chopped. All right, and then we're going in with our garlic. Now the reason I mentioned this garlic up before I put it in the food processor is I wanted to make sure it gets very well blended. And sometimes since we have all this other stuff going on in there, the garlic can kind of stick to the sides and doesn't get blended up as nicely. So that's why I processed that a little bit. It doesn't have to be. Traditionally, yes, they would use a white bread, but it does not have to be. The only thing there is avoid gluten-free. Gluten-free does not have enough of those glutens to hold the structure together, and you just get kind of a mealy mush, and it doesn't really do anything. A little pinch of red pepper flakes. For capers, you want something a little briny, so you could use a sour pickle maybe, or a dill pickle. That would give it a little cornichon, yeah, something that would give it a little of that bright brininess. So about 2 cups of our parsley. We did our 2 cloves of garlic, our 2 tablespoons of capers, and now we're putting in our third of a cup of olive oil. Yes, definitely. And some people would argue with you that using a mortar and pestle actually gives you a better flavor. Okay, we're using lemon juice, but we're gonna hold on that. We're gonna taste it. We're gonna do a pinch of salt and pepper in here as well. Just a little bit to get it going. Okay, and I'm gonna blend this a bit. That. Okay, now I'm going to go in with my rod. I'm going to put in, I don't know, maybe half of this to start. Let's see how my sauce comes together before I commit to all of that. This is the art part of cooking. So you'll see some of this is starting to cling. Well, I don't know how well you can see that. Some of it clings up in the top here of the processor. So I want to scrape that down and get it all incorporated. Yes. Yes, the cranberries are just rehydrating, so you won't have little chewy, leathery things in your salad. And put a little drizzle of lemon in. Again, not too much. All right, so this is looking good. Now from here, you can adjust your consistency as well. I think I'm gonna drain off some more of this milk and not add, for mine, not add too much more of the panade. Yeah, you can also adjust it with water or olive oil. With this, I would use olive oil because I want to keep my flavor. When you're putting in water, for the most part, you're lessening that flavor profile. Oh, and our onion. No, not all of it. Chef Emma was going to throw that in there for us.
Through the tiny little hole?
Through the tiny little hole, yes. Yeah, that should be good. All right. That's it. this will not be a flowing sauce, all right? It's not like a gravy. This falls more into the relish, remoulades, all of those lauds. All right, there's our green sauce. So we want to give a taste. Important thing chefs do, right, besides chop stuff up, is we taste as we go and make sure it's okay. Personally, I think I could use a pinch more salt and pepper, and maybe even a little more hint of oil for ours. And it helps you put on the top right.
We didn't use all the pecan.
So we use about half. So this should be a pretty bright and very earthy sauce that we've made here. So we're just going to put that out into a dish and have it on standby for our fish. All right, so now we're going to make our vinaigrette that's going to go on our wild rice salad. So vinaigrettes are one of the mother sauces, one of the 5 mother sauces. A basic vinaigrette starts with a 2-to-1 ratio. So that's 2 oils, 1 vinegar or acid. And from there, you can just play around with it. So in here today, we're doing pretty basic. To start with, I have some honey in my jar here. Okay, and then we have that orange juice. We want 1/3 of a cup here. 1/3 of a cup, and this is 1/4. That's for the olive oil. I love making fresh vinaigrettes. Once I started making these, all the store-bought stuff, oh, look at that. Look at that. Wow. Man, we're good. I have not had that question before. Could you freeze this sauce? You could, yeah, you could. The only thing that might happen is oxidizing, right? So it might turn a little brown when you defrost it. But yes, you could actually freeze this. Make sure to seal it up really well. Okay, then we're going to add our olive oil. Oh, let's talk a little bit about olive oils. Okay, so personally, I buy extra virgin and then I buy regular olive oil. That's another question. I save my extra virgin olive oil for finish work, such as this, okay? A lot of times when you're working with olive oil, it's going to get overwhelmed by other flavors. So why spend the money and use the extra virgin in instances where it's not going to shine as bright? So, and then I keep this regular olive oil for my sauteing and things like that. So vinaigrette is an emulsion. So just going to shake that like crazy. And what happens is as it emulsifies, it starts to get thicker. Now, any hand-shaken emulsion like this is going to separate after time. So don't think that you've done something wrong. That's just what it does. Just pick it up and shake it again before you're going to use it, right? You can also do this with a whisk. It takes a lot of hand power, arm power. So I like this jar method. Just make sure the lid's on tight. We've had a few moments where the lid was not on and somebody started shaking. So make sure your lid's on tight. All right, so that's the basics of a vinaigrette. This is a honey orange vinaigrette that we've made here tonight. I'm just going to set that aside until later. Oh, wait, let's go back. So when you're making a vinaigrette, you should taste your vinaigrette, sample it on something that's going to be in your salad. So I have a little piece of my apple here, because it'll change the flavor. Whatever it's on, it'll change the flavor. Give that a taste. Oh, that's delightful. So if you're doing a green salad, dip a leaf in there and taste it, and then adjust it however you want. Okay, so now we're going to assemble our salad. Today we chose to do just a straight wild rice. Okay, so that's what's in this bowl, even though it's kind of hard to see on camera. It's lovely dark wild rice. So I'm just breaking this up. This salad's a great way to use up leftover rice. And pretty much, like I said, once you've done it and you see what they're trying to make, play around with it. Throw in different fruits, change up your vinaigrette, just have fun. Okay, those are broken up. So we're gonna go in with our green onion. And tonight we're also gonna use some blueberry. Actually, we're gonna wait on the blueberries. We're gonna wait on that. Our apples. So see, they didn't brown. We caught them before they turned brown. And then we have our mint. Again, this will give it a nice little bright kick as well. Some of our parsley, so herbaceousness going on. And then our cranberries that have been soaking. So now what you want to do, you want to take these cranberries and you're going to just take them and then squeeze out this liquid. Okay, we don't want to add moisture to our salad. Just squeeze them and just dump them in there. Okay, so you should be able to tell that they're much softer than they were before we did that. Now, if I was going to be using, so we're using blueberries tonight, like I said. If I was going to be using, say, strawberries that were cut, I would want to wait until right before I serve the salad to add those, because they're going to give off juice. Just like our peaches that are macerating, those strawberries are going to do the same thing. Okay, so you'd want to wait. The blueberries will hold together fairly well, so we're going to put those in. I'm going to mix this up a little bit first. Oh, I'm getting hungry. All right. And the same with the nuts. The nuts will tend to get a little bit soggy, so I always like to wait and put them on right before I'm going to serve them. So we're going to set these back aside for now. I'm going to put a little bit of my dressing on here. So dressing, I know, is a very personal thing. Some people like very wet salads, some people like very dry. I try to find kind of a happy medium, and then I always have extra dressing, and I set it out on the table for my guests so they can do their final adjustments. Okay, and we'll put in some of these blueberries. And that's all there is to our rice salad. So we're going to let this sit in the fridge. You could let it sit out if you're really close to eating. You could leave it sit out as well. It's totally fine. And then we'll give it a taste, see if we need to adjust, add any more dressing to it right before we're going to serve it. Okay, now we're actually going to cook something. I know, surprising. We're finally here. So we're going to bring over our skillet here. Oh, here's the blueberries, yeah. Extra blueberries. Okay, get my oven on here, or my stove top on. Okay, so when we're cooking with pans, sauteing, searing, any of those activities, it's really important that you get your pans to the proper temperature. The biggest mistake we see is that people will turn on their stove, crank it all the way to high, throw their pan on, and then throw everything into the skillet. Okay, so what happens when you do that is that then that flame is trying to heat this whole mass, this whole volume, and it makes your food sit in the steaming and simmering temperature range for too long. So that's why things don't stay crisp, they don't get caramelized, things like that. Okay, so you want to stay out of that steam zone when you're sauteing and searing. So we've had our pans warming up. The best way to tell when your pan is at a proper temperature is, I think this is probably a millennia old technique. I think as soon as we've had pans and fire, you take a little bit of water, throw it in your pan. You should hear a sizzle. Let's see, I'll get a little bit more if you guys can hear it. Let's see. I don't know if you guys could hear that or not. Sound of applause. Okay, a nice sizzle. So you should always hear a little sound of applause before you start cooking. All right, so we're going to go in with a little bit of olive oil. Okay, and now we want this to get hot. Everything should get hot as you're cooking. You should allow it to get hot before you move on. Okay, so when fats are getting hot, liquid fats like oils, what happens is they start to shimmer a little bit. And then if you pull your oil all to one side, again, I don't know how well this will look on the camera. If you pull it all to one side and let it fall, you'll start to see these big streaks happening. That's the fat opening up, getting leggy as we call it, and that means we're ready to cook. Okay, if you're still not sure, just do a little test. Throw one thing in there, and again, we should see a nice little sizzle. See it bounce around? That means we're at temperature. So we want to cook things kind of in order. I think actually in your recipe, I had you doing your zucchini first. I apologize, I lied to you. We're actually going to do our red onions, our red pepper first, so that it will release more flavor. Okay, so when you're sauteing, you want to maintain contact. Okay, so a lot of people, they put stuff in and they just stir all the time. They go crazy, stir, stir, stir. That never gives the item chance to keep that contact, so it drops the heat every time and you can't create caramelization, right? Brown food is good food. And with this dish, if you get a little char going on, that's totally fine. Adds a little bit more flavor. Okay, so now we're going to go in with our zucchini. Can you guys smell that yet? Okay, we'll give this a little stir around, a little chef shake. Trying to get that to even out into one layer and get that contact on the skillet. Okay, let that sit. Okay, so seasoning. In general, you want to season as you go, all right? So I season kind of in thirds. So I'll hit it when I'm first starting out. Okay, so I'm going to throw in a little pepper and a little salt. And then I'll add a little bit more about halfway through, and then right before you serve, that's your last chance to adjust before you serve it out to your guests. Okay? Oh, let's talk about salt. Yeah. Okay, so salt, you see here, most chefs, we use pinch pots. We get used to how that feels in our hands, and we use either kosher or sea salt. Personally, I prefer a diamond salt. It has an excellent texture to it. You can really feel it in your fingers. So the more you do that, the more you'll know what your pinch is, how much seasoning you're putting into your dish. Okay, table salt tends to have anti-caking agents, iodines, and things like that. So not as great to cook with. It's also very finely particled, so it tends to bounce all over the place. So sometimes you won't know if it's actually gone in and stayed where you had seasoned. With the kosher salt, like I said, you can feel it. It measures less salty, so you have more space to build up to it. All right, that's looking nice. Okay, now we're going to put in our corn. for our corn. All right, we're putting in our corn next.
We do a little butter or.
Oh, right. Oh, right. How could I forget that? All right. So you can, at this point, we're going to add a little bit of flavor and some more fat, butter or bacon fat. We happen to have some bacon fat on hand here today. So we are going in with the bacon fat. So if you're cooking bacon, don't throw it away. Put it in a container, seal it up nice and airtight, and you can use it for other things like this. Adds another whole layer of flavor. All right, so now we're going to go in with some corn. Yep, with our corn now that we got that fat going. I'm going to make a little space here so my corn again makes contact. Again, we get a little char on here. I'm totally fine with that. In fact, I like this to have a little color. Okay. So you notice we cook things in the order that they take. Okay, our corn, we used frozen corn or even fresh corn. That's going to cook pretty quick. Pretty much all you have to do is warm it up and it's done. So that's why we put in the peppers first, then the zucchini, and then the corn. All right, now we're going to go in. Just set it for, trying to have patience here. Sometimes I get excited. Oh, yeah. Oh, you can also purchase bacon fat. I know it reads backwards to you guys. You can also purchase bacon fat as well. Almost. Give it some color. So we're going to use a little gentleman jack for our corn here. You can use, you don't have to use the liquor if you don't want to. And otherwise, any bourbon or whiskey will work in this recipe. All right. Okay, so now we're going to go in with our whiskey. And then we're going to add maple syrup. Make sure we get all that out. You don't want to cheat anybody there. All right, now we're going to do a little taste. Miss Emily, you want to give this a taste? Sure. It's not because I think it's poison and I want her to try it out first. I can't eat bell peppers, so we'll let Emily taste and see if we need to adjust our salt or pepper.
A little more salt.
A little more salt? Okay. Okay, so there's our corn and squash. So you notice when we did our cuts, they're all very close in size to our corn, so it's going to be a nice homogeneous dish. Okay, so we're going to go off heat and put in our green onion. Just like that. I'm going to slide this off heat, and that's what's going to wait for us until we're done. Okay, so now we're going to set up for our fish. So our fish is a double coat technique. So what you want to do is set up 3 trays. So our first tray, we're going to dredge with flour, and we're just going to put a little pinch of salt and pepper in there. You could add other flavors to this if you want. If you wanted to add some herbs, that's great. If you wanted to add maybe some paprika, yeah, some Old Bay, any of that would be great. We're going to just mix this up. Okay, and that's all there is for this part of the dredge. Okay, so there's our flour. Okay, set that aside. Okay, so then the next phase is our egg wash. So our egg wash here is going to consist of 2 eggs and some milk. Okay, so cracking eggs seems like an easy task, but it can be tricky. So one of the things I do is that I have a safety bowl. Okay, so a safety bowl keeps us safe. A lot of people crack their eggs on the edges of bowls. Okay, when you're using a narrow bowl, you have a chance of more fine particles of your egg getting into your dish. So I always hit my egg with something flat, or I hit it onto something flat. Nice big dimple. It can. So can adding alcohol in a pan cause it to flame or flambe? Yes. So you don't want your pan to be too hot and too dry. So if there's liquid in your pan, like we had that bacon fat in there, it's a little bit of a cushion going on, so it has less chance to ignite. If you're concerned that it might, just turn your flame off, give it a beat or 2 before you add your alcohol in. Okay? If there's a lot of things in the pan like we had, the chance of it igniting is low. Okay, so we put our egg into our safety bowl, no shells, all good. Now we can go into our other pan. Okay, and do the same thing with the other egg. Okay, no shells, all good. In there. And then we're just going to beat this up with some milk. Okay, so we're just going to beat this about. So we're trying to break down the proteins in that white and get this milk blended in a little bit better. Now again, I'm hand beating this, so I'm never going to get this completely homogenized. We just want to break this down as much as we can. Okay, so this is going to be the second part of our breading station. That's pretty good. Okay, so we're going to set that in the number 2 position. And then our last one is crumbs. So here we're using panko, which is a Japanese style breadcrumb. Okay, that's all that's in this one here. Okay, so doing our fish. Here I have some lovely cod for us tonight. So you want to make sure your fish is completely dry. You don't want to be adding extra moisture. And again, this moisture tends to take flavor away. So you're going to pat your fish. Also, you want to bring your fish out a little bit before you're going to cook it so it can come up to room temperature. Okay, so those are nice and dry. So first I'm going to dredge it in in the flour. So that's just making sure it's nice and coated in the flour. So what this is going to do, the flour is going to help act kind of like glue with the wash. So the wash will stick better, so then the panko will stick better. Okay, we don't need a lot on, so we want a nice light. Okay, so a nice light coating. You can barely tell that there's flour on there, all right? So now we go into the egg wash. Again, we're going to flip those around, get them nice and coated, and then into the panko. Okay, yes, I have the sticky hands. Now the panko, we want to get on there nice. Okay, so I'm going to pat that on, make sure it's sticking well. Flip that over, make sure this side's Whoops, make sure this side is nice and coated. Now you can put these off depending on how many you're doing. Like we're only doing 2, so I'm just going to leave them in the panko tray here. If you're doing a lot of them, you can set up a wire rack and set them on the rack so they stay nice and dry. I'm going to go rinse my hands off before we get ready to fry. Okay, so we have our fish at the ready. We're going to quick finish our parfait, and then we're going to fry up our fish, and we'll eat. Okay, so to finish our parfait, we've had in the refrigerator, yes, thank you. Sometimes the words escape me. We have been chilling our bowl and our whisk. Okay, so it's going to make better cream. What we're making here is kind of a no-bake cheesecake. Okay, so put our whisk in there. Okay, so then we're going to go in with our cream cheese. This has been softened. It'll blend better. Okay, and then I'm going to slowly add my cream. Okay, so this is heavy cream, not milk. Okay, whenever you're starting a mixer, you want to start it on low. Don't just crank it all the way up. One, you might end up wearing whatever you put in there. And 2, you want to blend things slowly. When you're creating aeration, the slower you build it, the more stable and airy actually it'll be, instead of just trying to put it all the way up on high immediately. You need to have a chance to build it. So we're going to go about medium, and then let this blend in. Then we're going to add some powdered sugar or confectioner's sugar, make it a little sweet. Once I have this almost all the way in, then we will pick up the speed a little bit more. So when you're making whipped cream, you can over whip. If you do over whip, then you've made butter, which is not entirely a bad thing. You have nice fresh butter. You just won't have your whipped cream for your recipe. So I'm pouring in a nice steady stream. See if you guys can see that. So yeah, so a cup of heavy cream is what we just put in there. Making sure to get all of it out. Quarter cup of cream cheese. Right. I'm going to take this down a little bit so I don't end up wearing powdered sugar. Tip that in a little bit at a time. Okay, all in. Okay, I'm going to do a scrape down. Whenever you're using a blender, a mixer, food processor, any of those, you should always stop at some point, push everything back down to make sure it's getting blended the way it's supposed to. then just because we can, we're also going to add a little bit more amaretto into this. Okay, it's Saturday night, why not? Again, if you don't want to do the alcohol, you do not have to. Okay, so now we're looking for our cream to start to thicken up a little bit. The exciting part where you just get to watch a machine do what it does. So you can see it's starting to create tracings and thicken up. So when your cream starts to hold together, it's not falling off. Almost there. I'm going to do one more scrape down, and we're going to get this a little bit more thick before we assemble the parfait. All right, there we go. You can actually really see the form and shape of the cream here. Alrighty. So we have a nice thick cream. Okay, stays on the spatula, doesn't go anywhere. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so we're going to assemble our parfait now. So we had our glasses, right, chilling for us earlier. So we're going to take a little bit of our cookie crumble, put that at the bottom. Okay, and then we're going to go in with some of our cream. Then we're going to lay in some of the peaches. Like so. Okay, then we'll go some more. You could put in some more cookies here if you wanted to. We'll put another layer of cream here. Very nice. And for garnish, I'm going to take a nice looking slice of my peach, one cookie that I didn't smash to bits, and then we're going to put on a little sprinkling of our nuts. Okay, so there's our peach parfait. All right, let's bring that up so you guys can see that a little better. There's our peach parfait. So we have little layers. You could do even more layers. You know, you could make it shorter and layer it up even more. All right. So we're going to put this back in the fridge. All right, let's cook our fish. Okay, so we're going to get our pan up to temperature. Do the old water check to see where we're at, since we have that sitting on the side for a little bit. Yep, that's what I thought. Not quite yet. So you see how the water just stayed there. We had to pull that to the side while we were working on our parfait. Yeah, stay hydrated while you're cooking, everybody. There we go. There's our sizzle. Nice. All right, so for our fish, we're going to use an oil and butter combination. This helps the butter not burn quite as quickly. possibly not as much as most people think, but it does give it a little bit of cushion. So we're gonna go in with our oil. And I want this pretty well coated. Okay, it's a shallow fry, it's not a deep fry, so I want a nice amount of oil in there. I'm gonna put in some butter. Let that down. So butter as it warms, we talked about liquid fats. So butter foams as it melts. So before we cook, we want that foaming to calm down a little bit. We chose our cookie was an almond thin cookie that we chose here. Any kind of cookie that you like, you can definitely use. A ginger snap would be excellent with the parfait. Yeah, peaches and ginger classic. All right, so now my foam from my butter has subsided a little bit. All right. So now we're going to go in with our fish. Lay that in there. See a little sizzle going on, action around there. So again, let it sit, let it do its thing, okay? This is when we refer to it as the flippy flop and the looky loo. Okay, so people get their protein in their pan or their grill or wherever they're cooking, and they want to know if it's done. So they keep picking it up and flipping it over. So again, it's not making contact with the surface, so you're not creating that caramelization. One of the tricks that restaurants do is that they mark or sear the outside of whatever protein you're doing, and then they finish it in the oven because they have a better control of it in the oven. It cooks more evenly all the way around. And that's something that home chefs really don't do. The tension, the excitement. Hey, not quite, leave it alone. Yeah. And we can finish up our salad. Into our lovely bowl. Now, the thicker your fish is, the longer it's going to take to cook, obviously. Fish needs to finish at a minimum of, well, you can pull it out of the pan at 140, and it hopefully then will carry over to 145. That's the minimum temp recommendation for fish. There we go. And these are going to take a little bit longer because these are pretty thick fillets of cod. Nice. So Chef Emily is bowling up the dishes that we've done. You guys can see the finished product. All right, here, let's slide those in so we can see. Okay.
Salad.
That's the wild rice salad there.
See the nice blueberries and the chiffonade here and the mint. Green onion, a nice background there. Chopped pecans, sprinkled bell.
And then we have our green sauce too.
Green sauce for our fish when it's finished. And our corn.
Get our corn. Oh, okay, tilapia. So this is a personal rant of mine, and I admit it. Tilapia is actually what most chefs refer to as a garbage fish. It's not specific anymore. Okay, let me preface this by saying nowadays, it is not a specific fish in the ocean. It's a catch-all for whatever they might have available. It's usually of debatable quality and origin. So my 2 cents to you is avoid tilapia. Get a fish from a sustainable source and one that has a fresh quality that you know. Cod is cod, period. So there, cod has gotten nice and brown on that side. Now I'm just going to tip them up and hit the edges as well. My other 2 cents about fish would be avoid farm raised if they're coming from Asian countries. There's our corn and squash. That looks beautiful. Very colorful, very bright, vibrant, right? Yes, very summery. All right. And there's our fish. We're just going to let that finish up. So hopefully if you've cooked along, you've kept up with me, and you have dinner to eat now.
I don't know how to show a salad without tossing it on the ground.
Oh, nice. There's hers. All right. Yay.
Right. That's from the Phoenix group. We didn't have parfait glasses, so
Nice.
we went with something just basic.
Yeah, that looks great.
And my fish is still cooking. Ed, can you get me?
Yeah, it might take a little bit longer.
Yeah. I have gigantic fillets of, what is it called? Swami or something?
Yeah, sweha. Yep. Yeah, that's a good fish.
That's what they had that was fur. All right.
Uh-huh.
So
Excellent. Oh, that makes me happy to see that.
How's everyone doing? Was this great?
Yep.
You have to watch the fish cooking, Ed.
We got another question coming in?
All right. Well, Chef,
So we had a question. Do we serve the sauce on the side or on the fish? Whenever I crust the fish, I always keep my sauce on the side. That way it doesn't sog out your crust.
all right. Well, I think that brings us to a close. Chef O and Chef Emily, thank you guys so much. It was wonderful for you to not only share the recipes, but those skills and tips that, you know, most of us don't possess. So we really appreciate that. And to the audience, thanks so much for joining in. I love the questions that people sent in. They were really helpful for me because I didn't have a chance to ask them. So I was glad everybody else was.
Yep. Oh, great.
We hope you all enjoyed cooking with Blue Hens. And everyone, thank you so much for sharing in this evening. We really appreciate it.